Okay. So the mean myth and the real. Okay. Um, Obsidian. And it does not work. Um. All right. Let's try this one more time. Okay. Okay. Nothing's. This dang screen's not even turning on. I should have done this properly. Mm-hmm. Oh, there you go. There you go. It worked. Uh, is it fully there? Let me stretch it. Make sure it's not anything funny going on. Fit the screen. All right. I'm gonna zoom in. Let's check again. Zoom in one more time. Okay. So I've lined up a list of articles. These are by one author and yeah, of course, multiple co-authors, but I just keyworded Jens Johnson. I saw some of his ideas. I really like them, and uh, to make it clear, I'm going through his papers, see if I can make a coherent argument. Come on. Hmm. Okay. Okay. Need to find what I already had listed down. I want to learn from this thing. Uh, there you go. Fastest payoffs. If you want. So GPT. I'm. You know what? Call it brain rot, but I'm gonna go with what GPT says. Okay. Much brighter than me. I ain't got nobody here to help me out when it comes to these stuff. So I'm gonna just go with what my gut tells me. All right. Well, not my gut, but all right. So am I seeing it? So GP says, does abortion harm the fetus? They want me to do that article first. So I'm gonna do that article first. No, I need to find that article. The article's right here. I'm gonna just snap it out of place. Boom. And continue this link. All right, then we're gonna just pull this over here. I'm gonna check off every time I'm finished with one. I'm just gonna check it like green. Boom. Yeah, I think it looks great if I do that, and it looks more fun. I need to remove the color. Okay. Zoom out. Does abortion harm the fetus? I like that they use the word harm here because most of the time when I hear someone says the fetus is being this or that pre-brained, I'm like, what do you mean harmed? And I've also heard people say you can harm cars. That's I'm gonna say it. That's the words that one kid on podiums. Why? I didn't hit back hard enough. But yeah, anyways. Carl, I'm gonna say Carl and then Jen. Department of Philosophy, Uppsala University, Sweden, etc., etc. Abstract. How much pages? Only 13 pages. Oh my god, that's easy. I might go through some articles tonight. Essential claim in abortion ethics is what might be called the harm claim. I must steal that. The claim that abortion harms the fetus. In this article, we put forward a simple and straightforward reason to reject the harm claim. Rather than invoking controversial assumptions about personal identity, or some non standard account of harm, as many other critiques of the harm claim have done. We suggest that aborted fetuses cannot be harmed for the simple reason that it does not occupy any well being level. Introduction. A central claim in abortion ethics is what we might call the harm claim, the claim that abortion harms the fetus. It is plausible to think that moral status of abortion depends substantially on whether the harm claim is true. In particular, since in abortions, harmfulness apparently counts morally against it, the harm claim can be used to argue for the moral impermissibility of abortion. Moreover, those who criticize the harm claim can use their criticisms not only to respond to such anti abortion arguments, but also argue more directly for the thesis that abortion is morally permissible. What? Wait, what? 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 Dog, what? But also can argue that more directly for the thesis that abortion is morally permissible. After all, a natural view is that abortion is harmless. Some water. Harmless, then it does not acquire any special justification. I'm gonna ask, I God, I'm already doing knucklehead critical thinking here, but I'm questioning this. Harm. I'm looking up where I got the file so I can put it in. Dude, okay. PDF, find, paste. I'm gonna ask it to explain. Mm. I'm gonna organize it as I go through, of course. I sorry, wrong one. Dang, wrong one. So it's gonna be organized and organized and organized. Right now, it's in a semi-random order. It's not really in order of anything. Um, Put this down. So we're right here. Let's see what. So when protester is usually argument, it starts to undermine the ability to perceive. What is this person talking about right here? This is interesting. Why did every time I need a screenshot? At least I can find something to do in the meantime. It's the same person from yesterday. I don't know. What are they saying? Okay. I feel like listen to what I said. Hashtag. I feel like pro choicers take life for granted. When they say that the baby will suffer because of adoption or bad homes, I feel like they aren't seeing the fact that they can have valuable experiences and lives they live. Would it be luxury compared to the Africans that are genocides, famines? Dude, how did that switch? What's up with the switch? Everything seems fine until what about the Africans that are in genocides, famines, or even silenced colonisms? Con- an Ethiopian child fighting for survival would view a U.S. child struggles as trivial in comparison. I feel like the suffering argument is pretty nuanced in my opinion. Suffering is relative, so is stress. Yeah, I agree. It's inevitable aspect of human experiences. Generally, the threshold of stress is going to be similar in both. It's just the thing that triggers it will be different. Hmm. I see the point. I see the point. I ain't gonna trash on you. That's a decent point. I'm not gonna say it's a good point. You're not gonna get that credit. You're wrong. The GPT finished. This paragraph isn't saying abortion is fine. It's setting up a lever. The whole paper pushes the harm claim. Explain in plain English, it claims that abortion harms the fetus. Many anti-abortion arguments lean on this because it's an act harm because the fact counts morally against doing it. Why it matters. If the harm claim is true, the power's argument for the abortion's impermissibility, if the critiques can show the harm claim is false, and not only block those arguments, they also get a direct route to permissibility. If an action is harmless, it doesn't need special justification. If an action is harmless, it doesn't need special justification. If an action is harmless, it doesn't need special justification. If an action is harmless, it doesn't need. What does that mean? They don't start with tricky identity theories or axiom harm. They promise a simpler reason to reject harm claim. The aborted fetus doesn't occupy any well-being level, so there's no subject who's made worse off. Thus, no harm. Scope early abortion usually. Late cases raise separate issues. That it's the into the from defines the start target harm claim. Explain what's central and singles the paper strategy. Deny harm by denying a fetal well-being in early early cases, not to argue abortion is good by smuggling the controversial identity thesis. I still understand. I'm gonna start using the voice mode, so at least it doesn't sound like I'm just on a single screen or sheet. That way, it all makes sense. In the meantime, I'm gonna just look for stuff to do. Still waiting. You're wrong. Treating harmless equals permissible as a principle is sloppy. The sentence in the paper is labeled as natural view, not a theorem. The author explicitly brackets the full moral verdict to focus only on whether abortion harms the fetus. Here's why no harm, no foul doesn't generally follow. Rights and duties can be non harm based. Broken, a promise breaking, trespass, or privacy violation can be wrong even when no one ends up worse off. The wrong tracks a right, not a welfare delta. Right and uncertainty. Imposing serious risk with lucky outcomes can still be wrong, except harm counts even when realized harm is zero. Collective action, rule based reasoning, individually, harmless actions littering one's minor cheating can be wrong uh, because universalizing them is destructive. Respect based constraints. Some theories say certain beings merit a kind of respect that forbids certain acts regardless of harm. Tallies think using a corpse disrespectfully or exploitation that leaves the victim better off. So even if you establish early abortion doesn't harm the fetus, you haven't yet earned the permissibility. You'd still have to show none of the non-harm reasons, right to the fetus, special parental obligation, respect of human life, justice-based reasoning, but strongly not for forbidden. Use this in your debate. Your opponent, it's harmless, so it's fine. Prove the bridge from no harm to. Bro is trying to coach me when he doesn't realize I'm pro-choice. I guess. Okay. After all, a natural view is that if abortion is harmless, then it does not require any special justification. Our focus, however, will not be on moral issues, but on the harm claim itself. We shall propose a simple and straightforward reason to reject the harm claim, rather than invoking controversial assumptions about personal identity or some non standard account of harm. As many other critiques of the harm claim have done, we shall suggest that the aborted fetus cannot be harmed for the simple reason that it does not occupy any well being level. What is this? Copy link to selection. This strategy for rejecting the harm claim has been previously neglected, and our main aim in this article is simply to draw attention to it and some of its advantages, determine whether the strategy should, in the end, be wholeheartedly embraced, requires further discussion. A clarification of what we will be concerned with, although this restriction will be largely left implicated, are abortions that are not usually laid, not performed after, let's say, 20 weeks, abortion that are usually late, giving rise to special questions, at least on the approach that we shall propose. Those cases are important too, but not will be, it won't be discussed here. Okay, the harm claim and the counterfactual comparative account. Oh my God, they're getting into the juice. I need a sheet. Jaja. The counter, okay, it will be instructive to begin by considering the most popular and widely discussed view in the general debate on the nature of harm. This view is usually called counterfactual comparative account. The counterfactual comparative account, an event, example, and action harms an individual if and only if, to the extent that the individual would have been balanced on balance better off. That is, her lifetime well being level would have been higher if it had not taken place. One prominent way of arguing for the harm claim, and one to which critics of the harm claim have been especially eager to respond, is to appeal to something like the counterfactual comparative account. For example, Don Marquis is right. Marquis, right? Killing someone harms her by making her life shorter and therefore typically worse than it otherwise would have been. Therefore, because killing someone makes her worse off, killing her harms her. Similarly, Marquis claims, on his view, premature death is a very serious harm, and like all harms, is understood as making an individual worse off than she otherwise would have been. Marquis 2004. These remarks, Marquis contends, apply to abortion no less than other kinds of killing. According to him, the aborted fetus would have gone on to have a valuable future like ours. It's in the name. If it had not been aborted, and would therefore had have been overall better off than it actually is. Hence, abortion harms the fetus. It might thus seem that the counterfactual comparative harm account provides a straightforward reason to accept the harm claim, to which I can summarize as this. Um, you're taking away future valuable goods, so you're reducing that balance to which it was beforehand. Importantly, however, the reason to deny the harm claim that we shall present is also a direct reason to deny that abortion. Wait, there's a little in section. Um, for the defenses of counterfactual accounts, closely related views, Bradley, Fiat, Hannah, Clarkson, Timmerman, example Marquis 24, 25, 2008, 2011, 2013. Of course, Marquis claims that abortion deprives the fetus of a value future like ours, a phrase made famous in Marquis 1989, can be used in variously different ways in abortion ethics. Again, we understand Marquis, his own views that abortion makes the fetus overall worse than it would have been otherwise, and thereby it harms it. because it deprives the fetus of a valuable future like ours. Another possible view, which we shall consider briefly in section V11, is that an event can deprive an individual of a valuable future like ours without making her overall worse off, and that contrary to the counterfactual comparative account, depriving her of such a future is sufficient for harming her. Yet another possible view is that an actions um, actions depriving an individual of a valuable feature like ours may or may not be sufficient for harming her, but depriving but is sufficient for there to be more reason against it. As our focus is on harm claim, we shall not discuss this latter view. Because some individuals would not have been well off, even if they had been allowed to live, advocates of this strategy cannot say every abortion harms the fetus. Typically, qualifications is the above quotes from Marquise. Ooh. They will thus want to restrict the scope of harm claim to more typical cases. This complication does not affect our own approaches, right? Which applies to cases where the fetus would have been well off had it been allowed to live, and cases where it would not satisfies the condition in the counterfactual comparative account. If our proposal is right, then the counterfactual comparative account does not support harm claim, but it denies it. Dun, 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 dun. 3 pages in, and it's getting spicy. I will get some water. I'll do some other things. I'll be back. Oh, is the micro? Finally, the microphone's working. Gosh, I washed the dishes, my dishes, all the dishes. Microphone dropped because I don't have a proper stand yet. My books are tearing apart. Okay, there you go. Everything was out of whack for a second. Oh, okay, let me sit properly on. And okay, where was I? Okay, harm claim. Many anti-abortion arguments lean on the idea that abortion harms the fetus, since doing harm usually counts morally against an act, right? If abortion harms, that's a reason to think it's wrong. I think Marquis' future like ours line abortion deprives the fetus of a valuable future. So it harms. Flip side, if critiques can show that abortion doesn't harm the fetus, they not only block those anti abortion arguments, they also get a straightforward route to permissibility. If an act is harmless, it doesn't need special moral justification. What the paper does, the author brackets broad moral debate and zoom in on the truth of the harm claim itself. Their special proposal, developed later, is early fetuses don't occupy any level of well being because they don't have mental states required for pleasure, pain, desire, and etc. And you can harm someone who has no well being level to lower. So early abortion doesn't harm the fetus in any relevant sense. They said aside unusually late abortions. If you want, I can also sketch how they compare this to other strategies, etc., and how they handle edge cases like coma patients, late term fetuses. Uh, so, two other strategies, it's also instructive, especially in virtue of bringing out the advantage of our own strategy. Hmm, to briefly consider two other strategies for rejecting the harm claim. Both of these strategies appeal. I accidentally opened Crudo. Wrong one. Okay. These strategies appeal in different ways to the fetus' lack of psychological connections to the individual who, in the absence of abortion, will receive goods in the future. So the fetus lacks psychological connections to the individual who, in absence of abortion, will receive various goods in the future. So I'm assuming this means the fetus is not. Internet's not that good, man. Dang, I'm having internet troubles. The first strategy is to argue that abortion cannot harm the fetus, since no future goods would have awaited the fetus even if it had not been aborted. Example C. Brill 2003, McNarley 1990, McMahon 2002, and Rattan 2016. This strategy is motivated by the view that we have never been fetuses, but instead started to exist at a later point, in particular when a sufficient rich psychology emerged. Clearly, in order for it to be true that a fetus would have received future goods if it had not been aborted, it needs to be true that the fetus would have been identical to some future recipient of goods. Thus, if we have never been fetuses, proponents of this strategy argue then abortion would not have deprived us of future goods. I mean, the only sentence that might be confusing me is rich psychology emerge. sufficiently rich psychology. I wonder what they mean by sufficiently. Uh, Maybe it's a sufficient condition, not anything, not necessary, like necessary. But I don't know. But clearly, in order to be true that a fetus would have received future goods, it had not been aborted. It needs to be true that the fetus would have been identical to some future recipient. Good. Thus, if we never been the fetuses, proponents of this strategy argue then abortion would not have deprived us of future goods. This strategy is compatible with the counterfactual comparative account, but of course it involves rejection of animalism. Rejection of animalism, the view that we are human animals, since animal with which you are associated with has been a fetus, it follows from animalism that you have been a fetus. Aborting the fetus would thus have prevented it from receiving the goods that you actually receive. While proponents of the present strategy might not regard rejection of animalism as a serious cause, many others do. After all, animalism is one of the major views of personal identity. Surely it's at least interesting to see if there is a plausible strategy for rejecting the harm claim that is neutral with respect to animalism. What do they mean? Surely it is at least interesting to see if there is a plausible strategy for rejecting harm claim that is neutral with respect to animalism. I'll plug this in just so I can understand. There's no point in reading an article if I don't understand. Okay. While that loads, I'm gonna go over somewhere else. Wait. Mm-hmm. Background: the harm test they're using on the counterfactual comparative claim. An event harms if with two F's you'd had been better off overall. It hadn't happened. Your lifetime well-being would be happier. Strategy one: psychological identity move. Say we were never fetuses. Then the fetus is not identical to the later person who so enjoys good, so abortion doesn't make that same individual worse off. That fits perfectly with the counterfactual comparative account. But this clashes with animalism. Animalism says that we are animals since the animal that is you are one, which was once a fetus, animalism implies that you have been a fetus. On that view, aborting the fetus would indeed have prevented you, the same animal, from receiving the goods you now receive. So the harm claim would go through. That's why authors say this first strategy involves rejection of animalism, which many see as biology big theoretic cost. So they want a neutral ground because animalism is a major view. It's interesting to ask whether there are ways to reject harm claims without taking sides in animalism slash non-animalism debate. That motivation for the author's own proposal later in the video. Their neutral proposal preview, they argue early fetus occupy no well-being level, no pleasure, pain, desires, etc. If there is no well-being level to lower, abortion doesn't make the fetus worse off. Even in animalism, even if animalism is true, so the harm claim fails without betting against animalism or adopting a radical harm theory. Okay. Side note, footnote, even questions whether Marquis' argument really presupposes animalism, but the main point above stands. Okay. I have heard that that within Marquis's argument that it does presuppose animalism and ontic vagueness as described by many other people. But I won't go into that. The second strategy for rejecting harm claim appeals to an account of harm, of killing and death that takes psychological connections more seriously than the counterfactual comparative account. The general idea is that even if a killing or a death prevents the individual from receiving various future goods and thereby makes her overall worse off than she would have been otherwise, it harms her only if she would have been at the future times at which she would have received those goods, psychologically connected to herself as she is before death. I need to read that again. The second strategy for rejecting the harm claim appeals to account of harm of killing and death that takes psychological connections more seriously than the counterfactual comparative account. The general idea is that even if a killing or death prevents the individual from receiving various future goods and thereby makes her overall worse off than what prevents connected to worse off, so it prevents goods, therefore leaves her worse off than she would have been otherwise. It harms her only if she would have been at the future times at which she would have received those goods, psychologically connected to herself, as she is had psychology at all. Recall that we are not here concerned with late fetuses, hence abortion does not harm it. Unlike the first strategy, this strategy does not leave the denial of harm claim hostage to any disputed claim about personal identity. In particular, it is compatible with animalism. However, the view of harm to which this strategy appeals is rather a radical one, which also has a few advocates in the general debate of nature. Even if rejecting animalism is necessary for this strategy to work, it is not clear that it is sufficient. In particular, even if you have never been a fetus, it remains the case that the animal which you are associated with has been a fetus and isn't it happy whenever you're happy. If it is, abortion would have been depriving it of this happiness. Thus, contrary to what Marquis himself 2013, along with many other apparently think, it's not clear that his argument presupposes animalism. See further Johnson 2019. For thorough defense of animalism, see Olson's 1997. For specifically abortion-related defense of animalism, see Kazor 2011, Lee 1997, 2010, Marquise 2013, and Perouse 2011. So the general debate on the nature of harm, though in particular, it is hard to swallow that an event can entirely be harmless, even like can be entirely harmless, even if it makes the individual much worse off than she would have been otherwise, and fail to make her well off. While we do not rule out the possibility that is non-standard view of harm is in and defensible. Surely it is interesting to see if we can deny the harm claim without invoking it. Unlike the two strategies just considered, our own strategy to which we now turn is compatible with the conjunction of animalism and the counterfactual comparative account. It is also compatible with both animalism and the counterfactual comparative account being false, and with exactly one of them being true. So these are both psychologically projected harm individuals, so we're never fetuses. Okay. The well being requirement. Or strategy appeals to an attractive and widely endorsed principle that states a necessary condition for harm, this section, and to specific reason to doubt that this condition is satisfied in the cases of abortion, next section. Here is the principle. The well being requirement, in order to have an event to harm an individual, the individual has to occupy a lifetime well being level. Wonder what they mean by lifetime? I understand what they mean by everything else. A bit confused on that part. Two initial remarks are in order. First, we take it to that someone has a lifetime well being level that is on balance, well off to some degree, right? Just in case she has, wait, that is on balance. I'm confused. Just in case she has at some time or another a temporal well being level that is well off to some degree at some particular time. How the individual lifetime well being is more specifically related to the well being requirement should not be conflated with the claim that an event harms someone only if she has temporal well being level at the time of occurrence of the event. The later claim is highly questionable. Arguably, for instance, you did not occupy any temporal well being level at all stages several years before your birth, yet an event that happens then can clearly harm you. For instance, by causing you to be in pain 10 years from now, the well being requirement is fully compatible with this judgment since you obviously have a lifetime well being level. I'll ask GPT just in case to clarify because I'm not gonna try to read through 50 times to understand. Better I understand right now. Tell me as it goes by. The well-being requirement is an implication of all main views in the general debate of nature of harm. To begin with, if the counterfactual comparative account is true, then in order for an event to harm an individual, it is not sufficient that For instance, the individual does not actually occupy a positive well being level, but would have done so if they were not for the event. What is required is for the individual to have a lower well being level than she would have had if she had not, if the event had not occurred. Okay, I think I should probably start drawing some of this. Because this stuff, it's better to draw on. Hmm. I got a comic book. But I don't know. Hmm. GPT comic book. Wait, I think I can come up with something more creative. Let's see. I want to understand what this means, and I'm gonna just connect to the other text. I think a nicer way for me to understand something is if it's visualized. I know it's an excuse, but it's fine. Hmm. Okay. Two initial remarks are the first in order. First, we take that someone has a lifetime well-being level that is on the balance well, to some degree, just in case she has at some time or another a temporal well-being level that is well off some degree at some particular time. How the individual lifetime well-being level is more specifically related to her various particular temporal well-being levels will not be relevant here. Second, the well-being requirement should not be conflated with the claim that an event harms someone only if she has temporal well-being level at the time of the occurrence of the event. The latter claim is highly questionable. Arguably, for instance, you did not occupy any time temporal well-being level at all several years before your birth. Yet an event that happens then can clearly harm you. For instance, causing you to be in pain 10 years from now. The well-being requirement is fully compatible with judgment since you obviously have a lifetime well-being level. So the comics, I didn't even read through the comic. I hope it's good. I don't see the. This would be an interesting graph. It's a bit odd looking because this point should be really down here. This point should be down here. This should be up. Now that makes more sense, and this should be up here. There we go. Okay. Okay. Lifetime versus temporal. So they were just comparing temporal and lifetime. I'll put this closer so I can see it. Draw. Okay. Two initial remarks are in order. First, we take that someone has a lifetime. So they specify lifetime. Highlight. And a lifetime well-being that is on that is on balance is on balance, well off to some degree. To understand really what they mean on balance, two kinds of well-beings. I'll use another summary by AI. Like I said, you can't judge me because it's better you understand it than you don't. Someday I'm gonna pay the price. But right now is not that day. So I'm gonna read the initial again. Two initial remarks are in. I'll read the explanation and then read back the original. That way I can see in reference to what I did not understand. A temporal well-being level equals how well you are off at some particular time. Example 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. What? How well you are off at some. Okay. So I guess quite literally, maybe you're just doing well on a Tuesday 7 p.m. You're having a jolly good day. Or well off you. A lifetime well-being is how well off you are overall across your life. Okay. I like to use symbols sometimes. It makes it makes me feel smart and also makes me memorize stuff. So I guess I'll use asterisks, no, arrows. So let's say live, live, live. Then the arrow goes back. Arrows go front. Does the back arrow? I think I'm onto something. Does the back arrow initiate uh what did it say? A temporal well being how well you are off at a certain particular time. What does that matter? Okay. So you're going throughout life. The backwards arrow just shows that you're well off at some particular time. Lifetime arrows are gonna just show da, 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 this across your lifetime. So there's never gonna be some backwards arrow that's at some temporal particular time. It's just gonna be always like that. Oh, that makes it look cool too. Okay, that makes it look cool. I'll push back on some, then go there. Okay. So it's like take it like a volume bar. There's never gonna be an arrow that you're not really speaking about some temporal like some specific time during some specific day during some specific day in the week on some specific time. Okay, it's gonna just be across your lifetime. So that's what they want me to do. Okay, I'm understanding. I'm getting it. The authors stipulate a simple link, you count as having lifetime well-being. If I saw this in that one book, Evil Not gave me, this one is a philosophical use of if and only if you have temporal. Wait, what? The author stipulates a simple link. You count as having lifetime well-being if you have a temporal well-being at some point, or sorry, at some time or another, even once. What? Okay. Shit. Sheesh. They don't need to say how all the momentary levels combine into the lifetime levels. Okay. The author stipulates a simple link. You count as having lifetime well being if and only if you have had a temporal well being level at some time or another, even once. They don't need to say how all the momentary levels combine into the lifetime moment. Um, Is it like saying there's gonna so to initiate uh okay. So you're not just gonna randomly that you're not just following okay. Mm, okay. So let's say you have a temporal well being right there. And then the rest continue. So the rest of the bars are just gonna mean uh it's now lifetime well being. I don't really understand. Hmm. 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 Format. Oh, that's a decent idea. I'm just gonna put O for this temporal. Okay, that kind of makes sense. Okay, let's say you have O right here. Okay, it's kind of makes sense. Um, I just don't get it. The author stipulates a simple link. You count as having lifetime well-being level if and only if you have temporal well-being level at some time or other even once. So I guess what I mean is at some point O just indicates well-being. At some point you've had well-being. That's when you now have lifetime level of well-being. I think okay. What the well-being requirement does and doesn't say. The well-being requirement says for an event to harm someone, the person must have a lifetime well-being. So there has to be a someone for whom things can go better or worse overall. So I think O equals perspective can go better or worse. Temporal well-being, how well you are off at some particular. Yeah, I don't know. The author stipulates a simple link. Mhm. You count as having a lifetime well being level if you have temporal well being at some time or other, even once. They don't need to say how all momentary levels combine into the lifetime level for their argument. I need to know what this means. So, well being requirement says for an event to harm someone, that person must have had a lifetime well being level. So, there has to be someone for whom things can go better or worse. Um, Do not confuse with the stronger and dubious claim that the person must have temporal well being level at the very time the event occurs. The author argues that's wrong. Events can harm you even if at the time they happened you didn't have any momentary well being level. Example, something happened before you were born can still harm you because you suffer years later. That's compatible with the well being requirement because you, the later sufferer, clearly have lifetime well being. Holy macaroni, I'm not tracking. Oh my god, I'm not tracking. So an event for an event to harm someone, that person must have a lifetime well being. Okay. Okay. Let's say you gain some sort of well being right here. Well being level here. I can imagine the ball is bouncing. Okay, think. Say for an event to harm someone, that person must have had a lifetime well-being level. So there has to be someone. So someone just means who can be who can have be better off or worse. Okay, understood. So O is gonna be uh perspective that can go better or worse. So the bar is going to be temporal well being. Understood. So it's just going to be in conjunction to one another. Okay. All right. So there has to be someone for whom things can go better or worse overall. Do not confuse this with much stronger and dubious claims that the person must have a temporal well being level at the very time the event occurs. The authors argue that's wrong. Events. So I can just say the bars are events. Okay. Must have temporal well being level at the very time the event occurs. The author argues that's wrong. So even events can harm you, even if at the time they happen, you didn't have any momentary well being level. Example, something that happened before you were born and still harm you by causing you to suffer years later. That's compatible with well-being requirement because the later suffering clearly have a lifetime well-being. Okay, think. So they must be talking about FAS, fetal alcohol syndrome. If they're talking about fetal alcohol syndrome, then they're just saying FAS. Then um, holy shit, I am. It's a event harms. Let's call them X. X just means entity that lacks property P. I don't know. Let's just say X lacks O, so X is not O. So X is being harmed by the event. Uh, is harmed. Is being harmed by the event, even if X is not O, because X you have a momentary well-being. Example, something that that happened before you were born can still harm you by causing you to suffer years later. I don't know what they mean before born, because you can, I don't know, and they're using the word you. Events can harm you. Something that had happened before you were born can still harm you by causing you to suffer years later. That's compatible with the well-being requirement because you later suffer. X is not O right now, but because X will be O, a future person. Think of a blank account versus a monthly statement. Having a lifetime well being level is like having a lifetime well being level is being being the kind of entity that can have an account at all. So maybe it means potential. Maybe potential just means so it has a potential. The account could just mean possible welfare level. So even if it lacks the entity lacks that bank account right now, it still uh, can have a bank account if everything goes okay. Typically, it has a bank account. So lifetime well-being level is like being the kind of entity that can have an account at all. So maybe it's saying you must be able to be have welfare or have a perspective or window to the world at some point, right? So yeah, okay, okay, okay. Having a temporal well-being level at time t is like having a balance on that day. Okay, the author points an unauthorized transaction on Monday can still harm your finances even if your account wasn't open until Tuesday. So all I'm getting is that if it's a sentient candidate or patient, so we understand that this thing is guaranteed to live on, and to the point it's gonna have future well-being. It shouldn't be whatever it's done to it right now is gonna be wrong because it's gonna affect it uh, right now, or sorry, it's gonna affect its years later on because it has lifetime well-being. When it reaches the point where it has a perspective. Only, I think. Okay. So as long as it ends up affecting your later balance, what matters for being harmable is that you are the sort of being who at some point can have balances, not that you had one at the exact second harmful cause occurred. Self check. Can an event at T0 harm you if at T0 you had no sensation or desires? Yes. If the later affects your well-being and you're a being who at some time has well-being levels that satisfy the well-being requirement. Can okay, if you want, I'll look at the comic and then I'll go back to there. Oh, yeah, okay. Lifetime versus temporal well-being. Temporal well-being. How well off you are at a particular time t. Life well-being. Overall, how your life goes across time. Well-being requirement. WBR. An event can harm X only if X has a lifetime well-being level, not if X had temporal well-being. So no, if one had temporal well-being at the time the event occurred. Several years before your birth, a toxin leak occurred. No temporal well-being yet at pre-birth time. In pain. Counterfactual comparative harm. So compatibility check. WBR is compatible with pre-birth harm because you, the later person, have lifetime well-being. WB, the pre-birth if event affects your lifetime even though you lacked WB at the time. WBR is compatible with pre-birth harm because you, the later person, have lifetime well-being. The pre-birth event affect your lifetime, even though you lacked what WB at a later time. I understand, but I don't. Takeaway: you must have well-being at time of event. Okay, so oh my God, you don't have to have well-being at the time of an event, right? Pre-birth events can harm you by lowering your overall lifetime well-being. Okay, I see. I'm just gonna take a screenshot of the messages I wrote here so it can criticize and all that stuff so I can better understand. Okay.
He woke up inside his
Love the markup, super helpful. Here's feedback just on the bits you tagged M with quick fixes. Where you're right or very close. O equals something that can go better or worse. Yes, think a subject who can have welfare. Tiny twill at a subject or being, not a perspective, so we keep identity in view. Those timelines with O, M, fine as a visual. Times marching rightward with O. Love the markup, super helpful. Here's feedback just on the Love the markup. Love the markup, super helpful. Here's feedback just on the bits you tagged M with quick fixes. Where you're right or very close. O equals something that can go better or worse. Yes, think a subject who can have welfare. Tiny twill at a subject or being, not a perspective, so we keep identity in view. Those timelines with O, M, fine as a visual. Times marching rightward, with O marking a being for whom welfare levels at times are meaningful. Just remember, a lifetime well-being level isn't the arrow itself. Formally, it's the fact that there exists at least one time when the subject has a temporal welfare level. They intentionally don't say how moments aggregate. That's right to highlight. The part that needs correction. X is not O right now, but because X will be O, I harms a future person. This slips. The well-being requirement is, open quote, if event E harms subject S, then S has a lifetime well-being level. And they define that as S has a lifetime well-being level if there exists some time t at which S has a temporal well-being level. Close quote. The key is which world we're evaluating in. It's the actual world in which the event occurs. Pre-birth harm case, their example. The event happens before you're born, but in the actual world you later exist and have temporal welfare. So T, you have welfare at T. Requirement satisfied, the earlier event can harm you. Early abortion case, the controversial target. If the abortion event ensures there is no time at all at which that very same individual ever has any temporal welfare, then T, welfare at T. The requirement fails, no subject is harmed, on this criterion alone. So it's not harms a future person in the sense of someone who doesn't and never will have welfare in the actual world. It's harms this very individual who, in the actual world, does have welfare at some time. If the event itself guarantees there will be no such time, then there's no harmed subject per the requirement. Handy formalization to lock it in. Let WTS equals S has a temporal welfare level at time T. Lifetime welfare, W equal S exists T WTS. Well-being requirement, text harm W clear S. So, text harm ES right arrow exists T WTS in the actual world of E. Pre-birth harm, event at T0, later T1 T0 with WT1S, true harm possible. Early abortion, no experiences ever, no T with WTS, harm fails by this requirement. Tiny polish on your diagram notes. Swap perspective O, subject being O. Keep the arrows for time, but remember lifetime welfare equals she at least one tick on that line where S has temporal welfare. Great question. Short answer, because it can harm the very same individual who will later exist and have welfare. The well-being requirement doesn't block that. It only says there must be someone who, at some time, can be better or worse off. In the FAST case, there is. Here's the clean logic. When giving FAST to a prebrain fetus is wrong harm-based route, let E equals the alcohol exposure while the fetus has no brain activity yet. Wrongness via harm is established if these conditions hold. 1. Numerical identity. The prebrain fetus and the later child are the same individual, S, continuous organism. 2. Later welfare. In the actual world, there exists a time, T1, after birth, such that WT1S, the child then has temporal well-being. 3. Causal decrement. Because of E, S's well-being at after T1 is lower than it otherwise would have been, e.g., pain, disability, reduced capacities. 4. Agency foreseeability. The decrement was foreseeable and avoidable by the agent who chose to drink. If 1s4 hold, then E harms S. By ordinary moral principles, don't inflict serious avoidable harm without justification, the act is wrong. Note, the fact that S had no welfare at the exact time of exposure doesn't matter. What matters is that S later does, and E worsens it. Why pre-brain doesn't rescue the act. The well-being requirement is satisfied because there exists a time later when S has welfare. It does not demand welfare at the moment of the act. This is just like pre-birth harm. An event before birth can harm you now if it lowers your current well-being. Other independent grounds that can also make it wrong. Even setting aside strict harm, several familiar moral ideas point the same way. Risk imposition. Knowingly imposing a serious, non-consensual risk of grave harm on a future person is wrong, even if harm isn't certain. Duties of care role obligations. Special obligations to protect one's future child from preventable serious harm. Contractualist justifiability test. The later child could reasonably reject a principle permitting avoidable serious congenital harm. Intention means, if one intends the impairment, rather than, say, an unavoidable side effect, that's an extra moral strike. Back when this argument would not show wrongness on harm grounds, if the pregnancy ends before there is any time t at which that same individual ever has welfare, no t with WTS, then harm-based wrongness, as defined above, isn't available. There's no harmed subject. Other moral considerations could still be discussed, but this route is closed. One-liner takeaway. Giving fast to a prebrain fetus is wrong because it foreseeably causes a later, worse life for that same individual, and the well-being requirement fully allows harms whose effects show up only later.